Hi everyone, my name is Anuradha Kumari and today we are going to explore about accessibility in React. So the topic of my talk today is no, React does not break accessibility, and it comes from the fact that people always say that whenever we are using any framework or library like React, Vue, Angular, so these lead to inaccessibility of websites and application. So today I'm going to show that no, that's not the case. They fully support accessibility, and the way we code is what makes websites inaccessible. Let's start. So before starting, a little bit of introduction about myself. My name is Anuradha Kumari. I am working as a front-end consultant at Passionate People. I'm also a media developer expert with Cloudinary and an accessibility advocate. So I'm always open to a technical discussion. So if you would like to connect, you can connect with me on LinkedIn at Anuradha15 or on Twitter at miracle_404. The topics which we are going to cover today are, we will start with a basic introduction of accessibility and its importance. Then first we will see that how we can test for accessibility issues, and then how can we fix it using code, React code, and some of the tools and resources which are useful when we are working with website accessibility. So always the first question is, what exactly is accessibility? Accessibility, which is also neuronamed as A11Y, where 11 refers to the number of letters between A and Y. So it means making resources and services usable by everyone, regardless of their ability or disability. Why should we care about accessibility? Because whenever we build it for the users, right? Whatever we are building, applications, websites, we build it for the users, but we do not know what our users could be going through. So like if they are disabled or they are not disabled, or what source of technologies they are using, like they could be using a mouse to navigate, or they could be using any assistive technology, like they could be using a keyboard, screen reader, etc. Then, and the most important thing is that by not adopting good coding practices, we are making the web accessible. That's why it's very important for us to know about web accessibility and doing things the right way. As per WHO or World Health Organization, 15% of the world population live with some form of disability. Now, this 15% translates to around 1 billion people around the world, and this is a very huge number. So we need to tend to these people, and we need to make sure that whatever we are creating are accessible to everyone, even if they are people with disability. There are different types of disabilities like visual, auditory, motor, or cognitive, and they are could be of different types like permanent, temporary, or situational. If we take an example of, let's say, motor disabilities, so if a person is born without a hand or leg, any kind of motor disabilities, that could be permanent disability. What if someone got into accident and that their arm is not working or leg is not working for a time being, let's say they got a fracture or something, that would be a temporary disability. Let's say we are shopping somewhere and we have one hand full of shopping bags, then we if we want to operate our mobile or something, we have to use just one other hand, then that could be considered as a situational disability. So this applies to every one of them, and every one of us could be in one situation where we have to use some of the accessibility features. So we should always keep in mind that whenever we build it for everyone. Since there are multiple types of disabilities, there are multiple ways to access web. So some people use screen readers, they use keyboard, or there are some people who use switch. Switch is a type of assistive technology, and then also people use magnifiers. So they use a lot of other things as well. These are the main ones which they use. Accessibility, when we talk about accessibility, it helps actually everyone. So there could be people who are having technical issues. Let's say they are on slow internet connection. Then also accessibility really helps. Then there could be smaller devices. So responsiveness is one form of accessibility itself. So if you have created your website to be responsive, then a person who is using your website on mobile or tablet, they could also use it in a proper way. Then there could be situational disability. Let's say I could hear totally fine, but I am in a noisy surrounding and I want to, let's say, listen to some podcasts. So I won't be able to hear properly. Then if there is audio transcripts for that, then it would really help me. Then there are progressive issues like with aging, multiple issues occur. So you might start hearing less, or we might start seeing less, or we could have some motor issues. In those cases also, if things are accessible, they really help. So for accessibility, there are these official guidelines. So today I'm going to talk about WCAG principles. So WCAG means Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and the different rules of it, they are divided into 4 different principles, which are acronymed as POER. In POER, P means perceivable. Perceivable means that whatever we are creating. So these POER acronym, whenever we are creating something, we must always make sure that we are adhering to these. Perceivable means that all the information should be perceivable by the users in any form of their, via any of their senses. So let's say there is some information, they should be able to either see it or able to hear it via screen readers or some other senses. Then O means operable. Now that user perceive that what this information is, they should be able to operate based upon that information. So let's say there is a button. So if a user knows now that it's a button, they should be able to operate it via not only mouse, but also via keyboard or any other assistive technology. U means understandable. Understandable means that whatever information or operation we are providing, that should be understandable by the user. So let's say there is a form. A very good example is that if we have formed the label in right way, then the user will be able to understand that what they have to fill in those form inputs. Then R stands for robust. Robust means whatever content we are creating, that must be robust enough and it can be interpreted by wide variety of user agents. Like there are different types of assistive technology, so it should be interpreted reliably by all those assistive technologies. So now that we know what accessibility is and what its importance, let's start by seeing some of the ways in which we can test. So today I'm going to first start with how to test for accessibility, because first we need to know what are common accessibility issues in order to, like, fix those and code those. So we must be able to know, like, how can we really test whether a thing is accessible or not. So for testing, the first way which I recommend is, or it's recommended everywhere, is unplug your mouse and just use your keyboard to test your interface which you have created. So this is a very important way. Let's go ahead to one website. So this is one website, e-commerce websites, and here let's say okay, I want to use my mouse, I will use my keyboard. So if you see my mouse is, cursor is will not move. I am trying to use tabs. So when we use keyboard, we use tabs and a shift tab to navigate between all interactive elements. So let's say I tab on it. Now if you see, when I press tab, I don't know where I am. The way to understand where we are on a particular website is via the outline. So I'm pressing tab again. I don't know still what happened. I press tab again. Now I press tab again. And if you see, the cursor is now in this search box. But there is no outline. I press tab again. Now there is a search icon and you can see this black outline on it. this outline let us know where we are on current page. So it's like a visual feedback. If it's a very common practice where what people do, they go ahead and say set outline none, all the input and button elements. So now what happens that while the user can operate them using mouse, but if a person is trying to navigate the website using keyboard, they won't be able to do that because they don't know where they are right now. So I press tab again. Ideally, the focus now should be on login, but since the outline is hidden, I cannot see where I am because I cannot see any visual feedback. I'm trying to tab again and again and again. So it's going on like groceries, mobile, fashion, but you just can't see. So I can't operate via keyboard because I don't know where I am right now or how to use. So this is a very important thing. That's why whenever you create something, always make sure that you test it via keyboard so that you get to know that whether the flow is good or not. So when you are using only keyboard, if the flow is right, if you can really tell that where you are right now, or can you really operate via just keyboard. So if there is a button, can you reach that button, and can you trigger the action on that button via just keyboard. So this is something which we need to test. Right, so this website which I showed, this is a highly inaccessible website because via keyboard I have no idea what is happening right now or where I am. So it's a very inaccessible website. Let's see what are other different ways in which we can test. Using automated tools. So there are some tools which are provided and we can use them to test for accessibility. Now notice here that automated tools will not give you all sort of accessibility errors. They are good for like detecting 30 to 40% of accessibility errors, but they do let you know all the common errors. So they will give you a list of good amount of errors and you can fix them. Let's see. So in DevTools, there is something called Lighthouse. Let's go in this website. So what I have done, actually, I have already used this Lighthouse and did the audit. So, but if you see here, there is another website. What we can do is inspect on the body of your website, and there is this Lighthouse tab, which is by default in the browser. I am in Google Chrome and I am using the Lighthouse tab in DevTools. From here, there are different categories. You can select that, hey, I want to test for accessibility, and let's say we are testing for desktop, and then click on generate report. It will reload your website and then it will give very nice, like, report of accessibility. And they also say that this is only they can only detect a subset of accessibility issues, and they also provide some things which we should manually check on our website. So let's say for this website, when I did the test, so this is flipkart.com, and I ran accessibility report for it, Lighthouse report, and it is 63. The score is 63. While score 100 doesn't mean that your website is really accessible. It can only test like 30 to 40% of accessibility, but still it is also 63. So now you can see a very good example. So there are list of accessibility issues, like this is button do not have an accessible name. So this button, which is search icon, this does not have accessible name. It means that there is no label or something which tells that what it does. So we can, when we can see it, we can know that, okay, this is a search icon, so this will perform search. But let's say user cannot see, so they won't be able to understand. They will come across it and it will be like button. So the screen reader will only pronounce button. So user will not understand that what does this button do. That's why giving an accessible name is important. Then there are multiple images or in website, but there is no alt tag for those. So in those cases also, the user won't be able to understand. So if user cannot see, for them, they will only know that there is a graphics there, but what graphics? And if there is some important information on that image, then the user will miss out on it. So that's why we must always provide proper alt attributes to all the images. Then it also gives a good information about contrast ratio and all. So this is a very nice way. So after testing with keyboard, you can go ahead and audit via Lighthouse. And there is another one, Axe Dev Tool. So you have to install it, and it gets installed here just as a Lighthouse tab. And actually, Lighthouse also it runs on the Axe principles only. So it uses Axe in the hood. So you will get these errors, and you should go ahead and fix these errors properly, and also check whatever they say that, hey, you need to manually check some of the items. Go ahead and check these things as well, so that you make your website more accessible. So, and then there are different extensions. So I have listed 2 and 3. So Lighthouse, Axe, and there is also a Wave browser extension. So for Wave, when you install Wave, it gets installed as a browser extension, and you can right click on your website and say Wave this page. When you say Wave this page, it gives a very good information about different accessibility issues, and it also highlights them. You can see the code as well. So if you click on it, you can see the code of that, and it also gives a nice structure of your website. So what is the structure of your website? If there is header, footer, navigation is in order, headings are in order or not. So it's a very nice tool, Wave, again, which you can always use. So the other way of testing is using screen readers. Now with screen readers, actually it's little difficult to test your websites when you start using a screen reader, but I always recommend learning some of the keys of screen reader and always testing your website with at least one screen reader, because then you also get to know that what user feel website, how the users use your website, how the users navigate our website. So it's a very good example. There are screen readers for all different operating system, right? Test using screen readers as well, so that you get to understand how they work. Now that we have seen some of the ways in which we test our website, so let's see how we can code with accessibility in mind. Like, how do we code so that the proper information is conveyed to all the users, and all the users are able to operate, understand our website and applications. So we will see React specific examples. The first point which I want to discuss today is about using semantic HTML tags. So semantic HTML tags are really, really important, and I always say this, that and I guess everyone recommends it, that by using semantic HTML tags, we really eliminate lots of accessibility issues. So today we are going to discuss about buttons and links. So what happens many times, users use the developers use div and span as buttons if they have to have a different styling or so, but this is really not recommended. There is a reason to have a button tag, there is a reason to have an anchor tag. So whenever you have to perform some action, always use buttons. Whenever you have to use navigation, like you are navigating the user from one place to another, use anchor tags. Let's see an example of it. So okay. Now here what I have done, that I have created 2 buttons, and I have used them. One I have created using button tag, and another I created using div tag. Now if I click on these, so I think I have added a console log to it. So let me open the console. Okay. Now when I click using mouse, you can see console log is done, hi from button, and this hi from div. So when I use mouse, everything works fine, but a user who will use a keyboard. So today all examples which we are going to see, that would be for a combination of keyboard and screen readers, because the people who use screen readers, they are going to use keyboard to navigate, or any other like keyboard type assistive technology. So today we are going to see the combination of keyboard and screen readers and all the issues related with that. Now here, let me use tab. So I want to go to a button, and if I want to use only keyboard, I will use tab. So when I press tab, you can see a black outline on this button. So it gives me a feedback that, hey, this button is now active, or currently I am here. And if I press, enter, So again, you can see high from button. So it means that it was triggered. The action on this button was triggered. Now, a button which was created using div tag, if I try to go through it via tab, I cannot do that. If you see, it just skipped this div. Why? Because div is a non-semantic HTML, and HTML doesn't know that I have to make div interactive. So even when I have added a on-click handler on div via code, still the accessibility features won't be available on this by default. So like if you use semantic HTML, what it does that all the accessibility features are attached to it. Keyboard accessibility, everything comes out of the box with it. But if we are using an non-semantic HTML, you have to take extra care. So if we see the code, so let's see the code once. Let me increase font a bit. So here, so this is our button tag. We just used on click and it works totally fine. But on div, we did the same. We used on click, but this is now not even reachable by keyboard, right? So there is a reason we can fix it in one way, right? And I'm going to show you that in case there are some issues in which you really are making some div clickable, then how you can do that. Otherwise, if it's a button, I highly suggest always use a button when you need a button. Now, if there is a div and you want to make it clickable because of some reasons, always make sure that it is also keyboard accessible. How we can do that? There are multiple things which we need to do here. So for example, first thing will be tab index, because we want it to be tabbable. So what tab index does, that it puts it in the tabbable flow. So if you checked, we were not able to tab on it, but now if I tab on it, so if you can see, this focus is coming here, but still if I press enter, it still won't work, because on click will only listen to the click event, like mouse click event for non-semantic HTML. If we want to trigger it via enter or space as well, which is the keyboard accessibility feature for button. So button can be triggered using mouse and or via enter and space, enter or space bar using the keyboard. So to do that, we will have to write a key down handler. So let me grab it. We need to add a key down handler here. And on key down, we want to specifically target either space or enter event. So when the user presses either space bar or enter, then only this on click event or this event should get fired. So now that I have done that, let me now I press enter and you see key down event on div, it happened. So we have to add an extra on key down event to make sure that non-semantic HTML are also keyboard accessible. Again, I repeat that this is really, I mean, whenever you want to have it clickable, mostly it should be either button or link. But still, if you are creating some complex element, always make sure that you are using proper keyboard accessibility features so that it is also accessible via keyboard. Okay. So second example is anchor. So when we are having links, I have seen on multiple websites that people use button for creating links. So for example, here this second link I have created using anchor tag, but first link is created using button tag, and via styling we make it look like it's a link, but this has again accessibility issues. So what accessibility issues? So again, I will let me start the screen reader. There is a shortcut via which we can navigate all the links of this website. So what if I'm trying to check what are all different links on it website? So I will use insert and F7, and in this dialog I get all the links. But if I am creating any link via not anchor tag, that won't be present here. So for example, the name of this link is go to Stack Overflow. This is a button displayed as link. So if you see here, that is not present. That will be present under buttons, go to Stack Overflow. But if So if I'm trying to navigate via screen readers that, hey, take me to all the links, I will not get those links here. So I could miss out on information. What if all the links are, created via using any other tag? So I am going to miss on those links. I will never find those links if I am using these shortcuts for navigating to links. That's why always use anchor tags for creating links. Form accessibility. So the next thing which we are going to discuss about is forms. Forms are really important because forms are almost everywhere, for signing up, signing in, to filling some information or buying something. Everywhere there are forms. You have to fill forms. So we are going to see some of the ways in which we make form accessible. So the first thing is don't hide outline. Again, this is important because as I showed you, if the outline will be hidden, user will not be able to understand which input they are currently on or which button they are currently on. So for example, here we have a form. Let's say I'm trying to tab through it, so there is no outline on it, and now when I tab it again, actually the current element now is this Twitter button, but since there is no outline, there is no way that I can understand where I am currently on this page. That's why never hide outline. I have seen many places where in CSS specifically we go ahead and say that hey, outline equal to none. So never do that unless you are giving some other style. So if you are using outline none and trying to use any you know uh, custom kind of styling, then definitely go ahead. For example, here on this website, I have this custom type of styling on my links. But still, I mean, there should be some styling to tell the user that, hey, this is your current active element, so that users get this feedback that where they are currently on this website. But otherwise, just don't use or outline none if you don't plan to use any different type of styling. So let's say I remove this styling from here, and now you can see this black outline on these. So this way I get to know that where I am currently. Now the second thing is labeling the form inputs. Many times what we do that in design also, there are designs like we rely on placeholders of this input. So it's an email field and it's a password field, and what we do that we do not provide any labels to it. We just make this as a boxes, and we think that okay, placeholder is there, so user should will know. But what if a user is using it via a screen reader, right? So if the user uses it via screen reader, if there will be no label associated, then the information won't be conveyed correctly to the user. Also, what if there are, let's say, 10 inputs to be filled? Now, if once you start filling, let's say I fill it something, Ali at the rate. So if I fill something, right? um, then once you start filling, the placeholder also goes away. So let's say some error comes, then you will not know what this field is. If there are like multiple fields, we might not be able to understand what exactly we had to fill in that input. So always have labels attached with the forms. So how we can do that? There are multiple ways of doing that. The most common which I have seen is people use this label with input. So if we do it like this, you can see there are these labels which come, but again this always doesn't correspond to this input. For that we have to do something extra. So if there is this label and this input, it doesn't say that this label is for this input only. For that I have to use something called HTML4. So if you just write HTML, it will be for. So you must be used to writing for equal to, and then ID of this input for which this label is. But in React JSX, since this syntax is in JavaScript and for is a reserved keyword for JavaScript, we cannot use for. For that, React provides something called HTML4. So if we want to use for, we have to use HTML4, and then it will tell that, hey, this label is for this HTML element. So basically this is for password and this is for email, right? So this will make sure that this inputs are labeled correctly. Now, another thing, so we see that we should always label form correctly. Now, there are more than this. So via these, we can make sure that basic accessibility of form, but we can enhance the accessibility via using aria features. Aria are accessible rich internet applications, and they have different like roles and different properties which we can assign to our HTML elements, and to add more accessibility features to it. How? Let us see. So currently, if you see here, what I'm doing, that while there are email and password, but there is a button, but this button is icon only. Now, since it's icon only, right? This is just icon only. So if we check the accessibility information of okay, let's check the accessibility information of this button. For that, what we can do, we go to DevTools. In DevTools, there is this elements tab. In it elements tab, there is a panel called accessibility pane. Now here we can see what is exposed to the assistive technologies. So how a screen reader or any other assistive technology will interpret this button. For this, you can see there is like role is button, it's focusable, that's fine, but there is no title as specified. So when the screen reader will come to it, it will just pronounce button. Now what button? User will not know that what this button will do. So we need to send this information to them. So for that, we can use something called aria label. So let's say this is the button in which I have an icon, but this icon gives no information. So we can use multiple combination of aria. So let's say I don't want to expose it. I can say aria hidden equal to true, because this is just an icon, gives no information. And I can say on the button aria label equal to login to, let's say, Twitter. So now what will happen if we see here, now this button, you can see this good information about it. So when screen readers will pronounce, they are going to pronounce button login to Twitter. So the user knows that what this button does. So I always used to use aria label, but recently I read a very nice article, and it told that what aria label, it does not corresponds to internationalization. So if you are using your website for internationalization, then aria label, these values won't get translated to the different languages. So for that, there were different recommendations. So different recommendations, like we can use aria labeled by. So what we can say, aria labeled by, and we can give a ID. So while aria label assigns label to button, aria labeled by, you can provide an ID here. So let's say I provide ID button label, and I can have a span here which has ID equal to button label. And here again, I am providing that label. Let's say I am saying login. Now, if I save it, you can see that this is labeled by. So again, you get this information login. So it will be pronounced as login button, login. So user will get this information. And now what we have to do is that since this is span, we don't want to show it to user. So person who can see, we do not want to show this on our UI. So we can create a class. So there is this styling called which we can all, I think it's a very handy styling which we should always have in our application. You can name it anything. I have named it screen reader only. So SR hyphen only, and it contains some information, some styling, which what it will do, it will hide this from users who can see. So it will hide it from the UI. So now what I do that I have that class, and now you see there is this span, but this span won't be seen here. So while we have visually hidden this, but still the button, uh, this button will have this label, and so we have created an accessible label, and this also gets labeled by will get translated. So yeah, this is good. And there is another way which we can use. So now we don't even need this aria labeled by. Okay, we can since we can create a span and hide it, so why not create a span inside a button and hide it? So I have created a span inside the button, and I can, you know, hide it. And so since this element is here, so this will be pronounced. So now if I go to this button, you can still see that it has a content login. So it will be pronounced because there is this content called login inside that button. So it will be pronounced. So we have created it accessible, and we have also visually hidden it. So it does both the job. Now, let's see where we are. We saw aria label, we saw aria labeled by, and we also saw how we can visually hide a content while also expose it to the accessibility tree. It is very important. We can do it with multiple things and make things more accessible and more descriptive for people who are using assistive technologies. The third one which I want to show is about aria required. So here, if you see, when I click on this, these colors come. It means it's error actually, because these both are required field. Now, but what I wanted is if we go ahead and for all our inputs, there is in HTML something called required. If you add required to both the fields, so and we press enter, so this default behavior comes wherein a pop-up comes some and it says that hey, this field is required. But most of the times whenever we are creating forms, we have our own styling and our own way of showing information to the user, so we do not use this required. So like here I'm not using required, I'm trying to rely on some styling. But what this will do, this will not give this information to the screen readers or assistive technology. So it will not tell them that this is a required field. For that, what we have to do, that we can use aria required. So if I say aria required equal to true, what this will do, that this will give this information that hey, this is like a required field. So you can see this information is not now passed on, that okay, this is a required field. And that's why when screen readers will pronounce that you have come across this input where you have to fill email, they will also say that it's required. Now, for form accessibility, we saw some of the aria things, but there are some more. Let's talk about errors. So when you show some error, so when we show some error to the users, we should not always rely on the colors. There are multiple places where you see that when there is some error or user presses enter or something, this feedback comes up. Let's say here this red means that this field is mandatory. Let's say I fill this one, so this error goes away, and now you can see just email field as red because we there is some error here. But this doesn't work well for all types of users. So if a user will have some sort of color blindness, they might not be able to understand what these colors mean, or if there is some error on this page or not. And same for screen readers again. So if we rely only on colors, how will screen reader users understand that there was a user? For that, we must always provide alternatives. Okay, so we should show helpful messages to a user, and also we need to announce these details. So let's see. So here what I have done is that I have created a div with result space where I'm trying to show all the errors. So I'm mapping the errors and showing them. So if I click here, you can see that these errors come here. So now these errors come, so we know exactly what's the error are, like email address is mandatory and password is mandatory. Also, why I talk about announcing these details, because while you show this error, so these are like again visual feedback, so we know that okay, there is this error, but let's say it was just this. And yeah, let me again start the screen readers, and I will show you that when the errors come, it doesn't convey this information to the screen reader users. So I'm starting off the screen reader. Now there is this error, but there is no feedback to the user, right? So user doesn't know that there is error or something else. So they press enter, and but they don't know what happened next. So I have added a role of status and aria life equal to polite. So what it does, that it announces the this information to the user when it's available. Let's see how it plays out. So if you saw, these errors were announced to the user. So when user pressed enter, they got to know that okay, these are the errors, so they will go ahead and fix these. So now that we have seen some of the examples of how we can code with accessibility in mind in our React applications, so these are some of the tools and extensions which I have listed, so which help us to write accessible applications. This is a JSX Ali plugin, which is a ESLint plugin. So if you install this in a website, in your application, whenever you are writing any HTML or something, it will give you helpful linting errors that these are not valid. Then there is React Axe. Wave, we already saw how we can wave it. There is something called Chrome Walks. This is a Chrome based screen reader. So if you don't want to install anything on your machine, you can use Chrome Walks, and this will act as a screen reader in your Chrome browser. So these are some of the resources which are you can use to read more about React accessibility. To summarize, the access to information is the right of every person. So whenever we are creating anything, we must always think from accessibility perspective. So apart from using semantic HTML and not relying on colors, if we want to enhance accessibility, sometimes we can use aria, but they should always be used with care, because if we use wrong aria, then it might break accessibility rather than enhancing it. So always read about it and think what we want to create, and then use a proper aria for it if you have to. Then always test your applications and websites with accessibility in mind. So test for them, and all the issues which you find, you should fix them. So we must always aim that whatever we are creating, we create it for everyone. So I have a small action item for you. If you learn anything today, pass on the learning and let's spread the awareness. This is how we combat the inaccessibility of web. So let's all work together to create more accessible web, which is inclusive for everyone. So to get the resources for this talk, you can either scan this QR code or visit the link t.ly/IFSO. I will also drop the links in comment. Thank you.